Welcome to the Visual Storytelling Podcast. Today I am very excited because there's a special guest on the show. So you guys have asked, I've listened, and you've asked for more guests on the show. And you know what? I went all the way to Okinawa, Japan to reach out to Ricky Chan, the founder of Leica Street Photography Podcast, who's with us today. So Ricky, first of all, thank you so much for joining the show today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you on the show because I've been listening to the podcast that you've started a year ago or a little bit more of a year ago, and you've got such a great array of guests talking about other stuff than the gear, right? So we talk a lot about the gear on YouTube, and you've got all the shows about the gear, but you've decided to build a show around just the pure craft of photography and trying to build a community. So walk us through a bit, how you got interested in photography, street photography, and decided to build a whole community around it.
Yeah, okay. So once again, thank you for having me. Ricky Chan is a nickname. It's not my real name, but it's been a long time since someone's called me that. I appreciate it. It just brought back memories from many years ago. I kind of got it when I came to Okinawa the first time. But as far as my podcast, yes, I'm actually approaching a year shortly. And that began with me just recording on a small little coffee table and a snowball mic. I just used to record my thoughts and feelings about street photography because I love the art so much. And the idea came about because I was searching through YouTube and other podcasts, and I just couldn't find something I really connected with. And I did a lot of research, a lot of search engines, and I just couldn't find nothing. So I just decided to do it myself. And so one day I asked my friend to be a guest, and that whole, conversation with other street photographers, it became real popular. And that's pretty much how I focus on it now. So I speak to pretty much everybody. I try to stay within Leica shooter community, but I've also spoken with non-Leica shooters as well. So you could see it's just a diverse community. And like you said, I'm trying to build it so that people can actually enjoy themselves and focus on street photography.
And speaking of street photography, I mean, you're pretty good street photographer yourself. Your love of black and white, shooting those street scenes. What brought you to? I mean, you've asked this question a million times to your guests, but what brought you to street photography on your side?
So that's a really good question, and it is actually the first time I've been asked in this aspect. So when I started photography, it was about 13 years ago, and I didn't know what street photography was. I picked up a camera from some other events, and the love of photography itself just grew on me. And the more I shot, the more I got bored of certain things, and then I would shoot less and less. And then one day, I was actually going on a trip to London with a coworker of mine, and we stopped in Starbucks, and a gentleman introduced himself, and he's like, "Oh, I'm a street photographer," and that was the first time I ever heard the term street photography. And we sat there, we talked a little while, and he's like, I shoot with a Fujifilm, and I was also shooting with a Fujifilm at the time, but I only had my Canon film camera at the time because I wanted to learn more film. So we exchanged contact information and we kept in touch. And slowly and surely, the more I spoke to him, the more he was showing me all these great photographers. Joel Meyerowitz. He showed me a really great movie, Everybody Street. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it.
Yeah, man.
And then just pretty much from there, my love for the genre of street photography just picked up, and I've never looked back. I'm not interested in shooting anything other. I mean, I will if I have to, and I'm paid to do it. But for me, my love and passion is definitely street photography.
And so you did mention, you wouldn't shoot anything else. So is it Is it because of the stories that are unfolding in front of your eyes? Is it because of the connection, through the lens that you get through the world? Like, what brings you that passion towards that form of photography?
Yeah, so it's exactly how you said. It was actually the connection and seeing the emotions and other people's interactions and the connections amongst themselves that I really fell in love with. Like I want to tell their story so other people could see it. On one of my episodes of my podcast, I was talking to somebody and I was telling them I walk with, a lot of people sometime, and I always carry my camera on me and I'm always shooting. And sometimes they would ask me, "Oh, what are you shooting?" And I would show them the photos, and it would literally be photos that would of a moment that happened right in front of us, and they didn't notice it happened.
Mm.
So for me to show them that, and they actually felt really inspired and they loved the photo. That's kind of why I continue doing what I'm doing.
And the whole part where you wanted to build a community around street
Mhm.
photography, and more precisely, I mean, for those who are watching on YouTube, I'll bring up a certain type of camera with a red dot on it, like, and some people might say like, what a bunch of snobs, like flashing their freaking
Yeah.
expensive cameras. But what brought you to building a community around these type of cameras in this genres?
So it's that's a real common question, and I like answering it because I've if anyone knows my story, I've shot pretty much every camera brand, right? And the one thing I've noticed amongst every other camera brand that's not Leica, and this is out of experience, my personal experience. I'm not trying to convince or persuade anybody that if you want to be a part of a family, you have to shoot Leica. Uh, so I noticed there was always some sort of like competition with other camera brands. Oh, my photo's better than this person's because of this, and oh, this person's not good because he doesn't know how to use his camera. So I that wasn't the reason why I did grab a Leica. I grabbed the Leica because my friend I was shooting with, he had one, and he let me experiment with it one time, and I was like,
Which
"Oh,
one
this is
was it? Which
beautiful."
one was it?
The one he had was an M6.
Ah, of
Um,
course.
yeah, but my first Leica was
The
actually an
baby
M3.
right there.
Yeah, yeah,
M3. Oh wow. Okay. Yeah,
yeah.
the
Mine
OG,
was an
the OG.
M3, and I still have it. And so yeah, I went, and actually that same day after shooting with them, we stopped in a local camera shop, and they actually just got a used one with the 50 mil Summicron, obviously because it's an
Mm.
M3. And I was just, kind of testing it out in the store, and it just felt completely different. I was shooting with the X Pro 2 at the time, so kind of like the whole rangefinder experience was similar, but the the actual shooting comparison of switching from Fujifilm to Leica was completely different. Like
Yeah.
I didn't have any of the dials. I just had my shutter and my aperture,
Yeah.
and that was it. And for me, that's what I really enjoyed about the cameras because now I'm forced to make the image entirely. So if anything messes up, I don't have anything to blame but myself.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, no, I would be actually pushing the idea about creating the image without any artifact, without any technology. You pushed that to an extreme. You said, you know what? Let's invest time, effort in black and white photography. So it's like Leica street photography, black and white Leica street photography. So
Yeah.
what drew you to black and white?
So the black and white, I grew towards shooting exclusive black and white with Fujifilm actually, and that was because I fell in love with the Acros film simulation.
Yeah, man.
I had the EVS, and that's the only one I ever used. All my photos were all taken with the EVF in Acros. And if I did post a color photo at the time, it was just a conversion from the black and white
Hmm.
raw file.
Hmm.
Excuse me. And I don't know, just the more I shot with black and white, the less I started liking color. There was nothing interesting about color. Now I know personal like really amazing color photographers, but for me, I'm just not interested in taking color photos. So Fujifilm kind of just cleaned the slate of color photography in general. And I do want to caveat and say that's only for digital. If I do shoot color, it's always on film
Hmm.
and film only. So I won't ever shoot a digital color photo. There's just something, excuse me, a certain look that color film produces that a digital camera can't.
And what's the usual film stock that's in your M3 or M6 or whatever?
So I'm actually still shooting film from like years ago. I bought it and I just stocked up and I was like, I want to shoot all of these films so I know which one I like the most. But I actually favor more portrait.
Yeah.
So the
Okay, so you
colors
so,
come
so
from
you
there.
took a loan at the bank to afford shooting Portra 400. You're right. That's how it works, right? In these
Yeah,
days,
I own a few banks.
so
That's a
expensive,
joke, but
so expensive, man. Yeah, man. So quick question around the Leica thing, because again, there's a lot of criticism. By the way, I'm the host of the Fuji Love Conversation show. I've shot Fuji since the X100 11 12
yeah,
years ago, and the rest is history. I've built a whole brand online with Fujifilm, but now I'm more in the Leica ecosystem. I shoot both, and I even throw Sony for video in there. I'm actually being filmed on a Sony right now. But
yeah.
do we spend too much time talking about gear, about cameras? Because I know you have an opinion on that. Your whole show is supposed to be less about gear, more about the art. But in
Yeah.
2022 and recently, are we spending too much time talking about gear as photographers?
I'm gonna be honest, and I'm gonna say the majority of photographers are, and it's not bad. Like obviously, people want to get new cameras eventually, but if you consider back in when photography was starting to first become popular, they were shooting with film cameras that had no technology,
Yeah,
and they were making great images. And that's something that I think a lot of people are disconnected from, where they've actually worried that their cameras and their gear, the newest lens, are going to make them take the greatest photo. And
yeah,
obviously, the photographers, we know that's not true. So I try to typically stay away from that entire topic, right? Like, so when I speak to someone on my podcast, the most I'll ask them is, "Oh, what camera do you use when you shoot?" But I don't. For me, I'm not interested in tech specs. So any of like the megapixels and the sharpness and the contrast out of lenses. If a person picks their shooting kit, then that's what they chose, and if they make great images with it, then that works for them.
yeah. I completely agree, and that it's so easy to get caught up in the megapixel conversation and the autofocus speed and so on. I mean, if you shoot Leica, yeah, the autofocus speed is how fast can you
Yeah.
autofocus with your with your vision and your fingers. But kind of on the same token, I've seen that your Instagram has fluctuated. Like you've decided to remove pictures, have a certain set of pictures. What's your POV on actual social media? A bit on the same token of gear. Are we spending too much time, thinking about social when we should be focusing maybe more about the art and expressing ourselves?
Well, on the first thing, everyone should always just be focusing on the art, right? Now, to answer the social media question, I think that yes, a lot of people are focused on social media because a lot of people are just posting photos just to post. They just want that immediate feedback. They want all the likes, they want all the follows, and that's okay if that's what you're after. For me, uh, I'll honestly admit I used to be that person when I was first starting off in street photography. When I learned what it was, I was taking a photo, and if I liked it, I would instantly transfer it with the Fuji app, and I would just post it. I didn't even wait to get home. That's how addictive social media was. I would
Yeah,
just shoot a picture like, oh, this is good, and then I'd post it. And then the more and more I was doing that, the less and less likes I was getting. And it made me feel some kind of way. I was like, I know my photos aren't the worst in the world, but I'm only getting like so many likes. And then one day it just, I just like, you know what? I'm not going to worry about likes and follows on social media. And you actually start hearing it now more.
yeah,
Actual, like, I want to say purist photographers, like people who actually enjoy the art and not focused on social media. They're actually saying, yeah, I don't shoot this because I want likes and follows. I shoot it because I like it. And I think that's what social media, especially Instagram, because that's the only one I really use, we're starting to see it more. So I do hope that, the likes and the follows kind of comes out of people's mentalities when they're out shooting, and then just focus on that. But my Instagram, so I took it in a different direction. I always, it was a little like too spread out. Like every photo wasn't kind of like lining up. And what I did was I wanted to have consistency on my Instagram page. I only have 14 photos, or I should say 14 stories. And
Mm-hmm.
honestly, I don't consider adding more. And I don't even look at photos to add on Instagram anymore, but just whatever I got, I got. But I wanted more than just one photo. I wanted to share the story of where I was at, where I was shooting. So if like any of my photos I click, there's up to 10, and it's just the series
Yeah.
depending on where I was at that time.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I think there's so much merit in sharing a story, and I'm not talking about a story on Instagram. I'm talking about a visual story that actually means something for you or for an audience, than trying to get likes on a single image. I'm totally with you. I'm also guilty of playing the game for 5, 6, 7 years on Instagram, and asking myself, and my latest podcast, the last one, if you guys want to listen to it, is the one previous to this one. It was about if social media is actually ruining our creativity. I think so. I think so because people are shooting, to your point, for likes, for instant gratification, for recognition, for a bunch of people that don't really care about their story or their images in the end. It's just, oh, nice photo, like, next. It's the now is gone generation. So I really connect with you when you say that, you're trying to be more intentional and share more meaningful stories. I really like that. But Ricky, talk to me about the community you're building, because that's how I found you. I mean, I was looking up Leica stuff. I mean, M6, M10, and Q2. I was like, okay, maybe I should start trying to connect with people that are like-minded. And I found your podcast. There's also another guy called, I don't know if you remember, a guy called, I think his name was Zach, and he had a podcast called Like a New Day. He was the only other guy with a Leica podcast. And I'm so, Zach, if you hear us, please come back to the community. But let's talk about your podcast. What drew you to build that community, and what has it brought you so far?
So the community actually began one day when I was recording with someone. I don't know why. I just asked them, like, hey, do you have any? And the reason, actually, I kind of know why now. I wanted to have more guests, right? Like, because I can only talk on a podcast by myself for so long before my stories are being repeated.
I can relate to that.
I was actually enjoying, I was enjoying the conversations with other photographers, and I just asked them, like, hey, do you have any photographers you feel like deserve recognition? And I'm not talking like Joel Meyerowitz and Phil Penman and all these other ambassadors for camera brands. Like, no, not everyone in the world is going to be an ambassador for a brand, right? I want to know the stories. I want to talk to the people that are out there on the street, just like me, day to day, work a normal job, save up all their money to buy whatever they need to shoot. That's who I wanted to hear from. And from that moment on, it just blossomed. And I literally, on my podcast, I speak to everybody. And I'm not actively searching for Leica ambassadors. If I talk to one, I talk to one, and they're actually really friendly. And I don't never met a Fujifilm ambassador. I've reached out for some reason. Again, this was going back to one of your earlier questions. Like, certain brands, they just think they're better than other people, right? But at the end of the day, we're saying we're just people. So I've had conversations with really well-renowned Leica ambassadors. Like, wow, like, this person? Like, yeah, I actually know these people now. And the brand is just so welcoming, and the community, they're just so different. And the one thing in common that everyone mentions is how accepting the Leica community is. So they don't care about which Leica you shoot, which lens you have. Yeah, they'll ask because they want to know if they would like to buy it, but it doesn't matter to them, And it's just a very friendly group of people, and I speak to people worldwide.
Yeah.
I have friends in Australia now. I have friends in Spain and all over Europe, in the US, now in Canada, South America, you name it. I've speak to everybody. So yeah, that's just how the Leica community is. We're real friendly, and I know I keep saying Leica community, but that's just how I see it.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I mean, again, I've been part of many communities like Fujifilm and Leica and others, and I truly believe that the one differentiator and Leica as a camera brand, they need to make money, they need to sell the M11 and like all this great stuff. But there's one thing that I keep seeing from that camera brand is their commitment and investment in supporting artists and the art of photography. Just the
Yes,
way they
definitely.
run the Leica gallery, just the way they, get some young photographers and they back them up, and not, just for a social media post or a blog post or whatever. They back them up from the get go, and they encourage them to blossom and to share stories, not just, to your point,
Mhm.
images on social media, which is very different than other camera brands where they flew people to Honolulu or whatever and they do a big party and then, oh, this is the greatest, autofocus lens. So very, very different approach. And again, it's a camera brand that's been around before all of these other camera brands. Not that one camera brand is
Mhm.
better than the other, but I do believe, like you, that the community aspect and the welcoming and the warm welcome that they offer to any shooters is making them very, very unique. What makes them very unique also is the price point because so damn
Everybody
expensive.
can get in it.
Yeah, exactly. But then, I mean, you can think about, you buy an M6 and then you're pretty much done, right? You don't have to buy an M7 or an uh, MP or MA or whatever. You're done. You're right. You make some adjustments. You do a CLA and then you're done for almost for life if you treat them well. So different mindset, than buying a Sony or that you want to upgrade every year. Enough about gear because we did say that we want to talk about the art, not just about the gear. But speaking of the art, what makes a good image for you? Because that's something that I think day in and day out we look at images online, in books, from very renowned photographers, and to your point, from day to day
Mhm.
workers like you and I that just likes to shoot. What makes a good image for you?
That's a great question. That's the first time I've actually been asked. For me, uh, I like to actually, when I look at a photo, I want to be able to tell my own story.
Hmm.
So I'm very hard when people send me photos. Hey, what do you think of this? And I'm very honest. This is not good. I think the photography community needs a lot of that. Tell people if their photo is not good if they ask you, right?
Yeah.
Don't be a jerk and just if you don't know someone like, hey, your photo sucks. If someone asks you, hey, how's my photo? Don't be that really good friend and tell them, hey, this is a great photo. Keep it up. You're never gonna get better. And I get a lot of that, and I'm just gonna call the baby ugly if it's ugly. If it's not a good photo, it's not a good photo. You see a lot of people trying to imitate, everybody's style, and
Mm.
that's something we can also attribute to Instagram.
Yeah.
It's good to get inspiration, but don't tell the same horrible story.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is a lot of cliche street photography shots. Just a normal person not doing nothing interesting, walking or crossing a street. And a lot of people may hate me, but I'm just, if you want to be better, this is something you need to do.
So,
Try to
so,
stay
so
away
so
from
don't
from
send
those.
Ricky that silhouette of a person crossing the street on exactly on the crosswalk.
Well, if it looks nice, if there's
Yeah, I'm
interesting
just kidding.
elements, if there's a really good story, I'm not gonna lie, I've seen really good photos of a silhouette of a person crossing crosswalks. But
Well, you did mention
if it's
Phil
just
Penman. He's got some pretty bangers of that style. Yeah.
yeah, so Phil Penman's one of the few Leica ambassadors I actually like to look at when he's
Hmm.
working because he shows that he's putting in work.
Yeah.
Um, and not every photo that everyone makes I'm gonna like, and
Hmm.
the same for me. Not every photo I make I expect everybody else to like. But I want to see a good story. Um, I'm really unique when it comes to composition. If there's something in there I like, then I don't. Your composition could be technically off or whatever. People go to school to learn composition and all of that. I want to see something interesting. I want to see a really good, strong emotion on the connection. If you got multiple people in there, If they're just walking and talking on their cell phone or whatever, it's a boring photo to me. And
Mm-hmm.
I guess a lot of that comes from my mentor, the person who introduced me to photography. When he was teaching me, he was very honest. He's like, "This photo, can I curse?
Sure, man. There's no
Okay,
explicit.
this
Yeah.
this photo sucks. This photo shit." And that mentality of when I was showing them my photos stuck with me, and now I do that to myself when I shoot. So
Hmm.
I will never show anyone a photo I don't like of mine, and it should be the same for you.
And you talked about composition, and some people go to school. If my researchers give me the right information, you did go back to, or not go back, but go to photography school recently. So how's that playing out for
Yes.
you?
So actually, it's the second time I went back to the same photography school, New York Institute of Photography.
Yep.
The first time I went back after I started learning photography, and that was just to learn stuff that I felt can make me a better overall photographer. At that time, I still didn't know what street photography was,
Hmm.
but now I was to the point in my street photography where I felt like I maxed out knowing what I could learn on my own, right? So I decided to enroll in the photojournalism course, and I wanted to tell better stories with my photos. So that's why I went back. I'm still I'm still taking the classes. I like it because it's at your own pace. And like I said, I've been really busy. I'm in the second module,
Okay.
and I hope I can finish that this week.
Oh wow. Okay, so you're almost done for the second module. Is it something that is completely different than what you can get, through YouTube or through workshops and so on and so forth? Do you feel that it's worth, paying and going to school versus
Yeah.
the workshop and the other routes?
So I have mixed feelings on it. Like, yes and no. Like, sometimes they're going to teach you things you already know. And in that aspect, sometimes it's not worth going back to school. But then there's also those moments where you will learn something you never, and that's why I wanted to go back. Like,
Hmm.
I know they were going to try to teach me proper exposure and how to frame and how to compose. I didn't go back to school for that. I went back to learn the things of street photography and photojournalism, documentary that I didn't know. How to engage with your subject, how to tell a story, storyline, sequencing, arching, all that stuff that I didn't know, terms I never heard. And I'm sure you can probably find it on YouTube if you search hard enough. But a lot of YouTube videos now is just all clickbait, and I don't have the time to swim through it. So
Yeah.
I did the school, and I think anyone can benefit from it.
It's a very good point, and I mean, you mentioned photojournalism, and that's, I don't know if I can say that it's, not a popular topic on YouTube, but I don't see a lot of people talking about how to engage with subjects. I mean, there's a couple YouTubers, but to your point, it's more about this latest zoom lens or prime, Fuji GFX 85, whatever the new lens that they come up with. So I agree. Yeah, it's a very hard type of information to get through online. Maybe there's Skillshare. That might be an in between going fully back to school and YouTube. But yeah, it's hard to get the good info out there. So Ricky, what inspires you? Like, do you read books? I mean, you just mentioned you don't have a lot of time to go on YouTube, but do you read books? Do you watch other photographers? You mentioned a mentor. What inspires you?
Definitely a mentor. I think everybody in photography needs a mentor. Unless your name's Joel Meyerowitz, Henry Cartier-Bresson, and even they had mentors. So
Yeah.
that just goes back to show you, like, you can always improve. Uh, that people you need a mentor. They're gonna bring the best out of you, and that's where I was at. I didn't get unmotivated for taking street photos. Like I said, I wanted to become better. So I did start buying more and more photo books. I got like six of them last week, and just looking at them again, technology didn't matter. It's just the eye, and you're like, wow, like people can actually make this photo with what they have, and all it is light and how you see it and how you tell the story, and that alone is inspiring. But mentorship will inspire you in a whole nother level because they're gonna actually dig deep and ask you the tough questions on what you want to do with your photography.
Mm.
Everybody wants their, most photographers' goal is to be a brand ambassador, but again, like I said, not everybody will be. But if you want to make meaningful photographs, you need someone to help you get there.
This is so true what you're saying, brand ambassador and so on. Can you believe Soy Lighter or freaking Gordon Parks, trying to make it as a photographer if they became brand ambassadors? Like for me, there's a moment in time where photographers were driven by the art and driven by, using photography to send a message, where it went from that to trying to become an ambassador for Nikon or Leica and so on. And nothing against brand ambassadors. By the way, I know a lot of them. I interviewed a lot of them on my shows, and I respect them. And hey, you got to make a living, sometimes. And
Yeah.
you and I have a job, but some of these guys, if they're not shooting a wedding, they're not making any freaking money. So they need other source of revenues, and it's great when you can teach others through a brand association. Kudos to them. But I do believe that it's basically diluting the essence of why we shoot, of why we make photography. That's why maybe I'm a bit romantic. I don't know for you, but the era of Soy Lighter, Joel Marowitz, Gordon Parks, all these guys, they didn't care about this freaking piece of metal that they had in their hands. Yes, they could be inspired if it was, a certain body layout and so on, but they cared about the story. They cared about what the image could do to the world. When Gordon Parks, photographed all of these New York crime scenes and so on, he was trying to send a message. And when he was trying to advance the black cause and so on, wow, this is where you're like, who cares what you shoot? You're actually trying to change the world with your art. That for me resonates a lot. And to your point, do we still have that today? A lot of photographers still do. And this is where I think I'll make the last link with the brand ambassadorship. This is where I think Leica is probably the only brand who looks after those photographers that don't have the best followings or the most numbers and the KPIs and so on, but they connect with the art that they're making and the message that they're sending. So I think this is great. So Ricky, you mentioned Instagram, but is there any other platform that you use or that you leverage? I mean, we know you have a podcast, but for you, is it Instagram and audio? That's it, or is there any other platforms that you use? Yeah,
That's all.
that's great.
So my Instagram, I like I said, I have like 14 photos on there, and if I post one, I post one. If I don't, I don't. But I use it for connections.
Yeah.
I connect. That's how I connect with everybody, because pretty much everyone in the world is using Instagram, and that's to my benefit. And if it wasn't for that, I probably would use it less. But I just love it to connect. So my podcast and my Instagram.
Yep. And is it different in Japan, the way people react to street photography, to their photos being taken and posted online, or is it? I mean, you've traveled a lot. I've traveled a lot. I've never been to Japan though, so I would love to hear a little bit more about how people react to street photographers.
Some people, well, from my shooting experience, most people never even know their photo has been taken. I've shot with people where they will put the camera on a person's face and then they will know their photo was taken. But for the most part, I mean, I can get pretty close. I'm not scared. I'm not shy. I can get close if I want to. I can shoot, relatively close, kind of far, whatever it is that I'm trying to capture. But for the most part, most people don't even realize you've taken their photo. I try to be very respectful when I do. I don't want to be in disrespectful nature, to kind of, like, oh, look at this person's misfortune. So no, if I see something that I don't feel comfortable taking, I won't. But for the most part, the people, they don't say nothing. They just continue on with their day. And that was the same when I was in London. I've only ever had one person approach me and ask me to delete a photo,
Okay.
but that was it. That was actually in England.
And you didn't have your film camera, so you could not pretend to I can't. It's film and stuff,
Yeah,
right?
no.
and
Yeah, that was a funny story, but
well, if you had is it the Leica MD? Is it the one that doesn't have a screen in the back, but it's digital?
No, I wanted a like a MD, but I didn't get the. I wasn't able to find one. So
I think there's like 3,000 in the world. Is that like the count, or it's very
they
hard to find?
have the original Leica MD, and then they have the M10D,
Oh
and
yeah, yeah.
both of them, yeah, they. I don't know how many of each they made, but
But you
I
did,
wanted the M10D originally.
yeah. Well, I mean, if you find one, but actually, you're in the right place, right? So, am I
Mhm.
dreaming this, or it's easier to get access to all the models in Japan than it is outside of Japan?
I will say from experience, you will see the harder to find models very easily out here.
Hmm.
I've seen M10 reporters, all kinds of other limited editions, and I've seen them like not just one or two, just like aisles and aisles
Wow,
of Leica bodies. Yeah,
I need to go to Japan. That's my
definitely. You will leave broke.
yeah. Well, for sure, for sure. Quick question. We're approaching the end of the podcast, but quick question around going back to the Leica community that you're building. So, talk to me about one interview that actually changed the way you think about photography, because you're interviewing all of these great guests. But talk to me
Mhm.
about one sentence or one conversation you had that you went like, "Huh, wow, I'm glad I had this conversation today."
That's a really difficult because I feel like that from all of them, all their stories are so different. Like we shoot the same topic, the same genre, but everybody's story is different. Um,
But is there one that you're like, "Wow, okay, this one is like I need to write that down or to take a note because there's a light bulb that just went off."
that's the next one.
Oh, that's great.
I haven't recorded. I mean, I've gotten a lot of good information. Um, everybody's story is unique, and I just take away so much. I couldn't say just one made me feel differently.
Hmm.
They all do the same. It's hard to choose. The people I speak to are amazing people. I
A-
still keep in contact with them.
Absolutely, absolutely. And is are the people always connected to you, or sometimes you reach out to like people you absolutely don't know, and you're just like, hey, let's hop on the audio feed and chat.
Yeah. So, with the exception of Carlos Mendez and Don Stevie, those
Hmm.
are the only two photographers I actually knew when I began the podcast. And everybody else, I never met, never spoke to, never seen in my life. I just come across them on Instagram and I'll send them a message and they'll respond and we just develop friendships from there.
Nice, nice. This is great because the conversation we're having right now. I mean, I'm in Montreal. It's 10:05 p.m. You're actually a day later. It's like what is it?
It's noon
It's noon, and we're having this
Saturday.
conversation. Yeah, and we connected through Instagram. So yeah, so we sometimes we like to shit on Instagram, but hey, that's how we got this feed going. So very happy about that. So what's you talked about what's next. So can you walk us through a bit of like what are your goals for 2022, for the podcast, for your photography, family? Like what are your goals?
So my podcast, I just want to make larger. I want more people. I would like more people to listen. I would like to hear more stories from more people. I I just want the world to hear it. There's no motivation behind it. I'm not trying to follow or chase again money or anything like that. I don't do this for any of that. I get paid well at my job, so I I survive well enough. So this is all my podcasting and social media stuff. That it's all for fun. I have no interest on monetizing it. Now, if it happens, it happens. I won't say no to it, but that's not my goal. So there's that. And then a lot of this year, I just want to take the time to actually study and enjoy photography
Hmm,
and then apply what I learned to my photos.
nice.
So I don't plan on releasing any projects for photo wise this year. Maybe next year, but this year I'm working with mentors. I'm still enrolled in that school, and I got a lot of stuff going on my plate over here for work. So, but other than that, I'm focused on the art. I want to better myself.
Yeah, man, it's that's probably the best goal you can have, without the pressure of, again, trying to grow this or to get more of that. I mean, just focusing on growing your art and your knowledge and applying it day in, day out. Do you shoot every day, Ricky?
I used to, more now since these crazy COVID restrictions.
Yeah.
Lock you down to your house. But even then, I would try to take at least one photo in the house of something different, which is really difficult because nothing in your house is really different. But if you look at it in different ways, then yeah, there's that. So there was just a lot of, you can go outside, you can't go outside, you can do this, you can't do that. And while I was caught up in that, I went and enrolled in university again. So that takes a lot of my time too. So I shoot when I can. I'm actually going to shoot a little later today, maybe for an hour or two, and then off to school again.
Nice, nice. Well, maybe we reinvite you in a year, and we look at the progress you've made, and some of the great guests you got on your podcast. Very exciting stuff. So I want to thank you, Ricky, for taking the time today to chat with us. It's been a heck of a conversation. Really enjoyed it, and I wish you all the best again for your photography, for your podcast, for your health. Stay healthy, stay creative. So again, I really want to thank you for participating today. Where can people find you online?
Oh, thank you for that. So again, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. This was a great conversation. I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't expecting these type of questions, and it made me think a little.
Well,
normally I'm the one
that's why I'm here.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it. So for my podcast, it's called Leica Street Photography Collective, and it's free on all major DSPs, and my Instagram is XX_IX_. Nope, I lie. IXVI_XX. Sorry.
Perfect. I'll put the link down below so people can actually just easily click on it. So if people want to also hear this podcast, it's available on all the podcasting platforms, the Visual Storytelling Podcast. And I invite you to subscribe to it if you're not subscribed to the podcast. And if you want to send us a message, if you want to, ask more questions for Ricky or for myself, you can find me online. I'm at Fred Ranger on all the platforms. And also you can message Ricky. I'll put the links in the description down below. So, hey, Ricky, have a good one. And cheers.
Yeah, cheers.